Hello, welcome to the Oswald Game. I'm your host, Rob. Welcome to this special edition show. One of our, hopefully, a continuing show, the first of many. I'm very excited to be here today. I'm joined by Tom Layton. Hey, Tom, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, thanks. How are you doing, man? You good?
I'm doing great. And also Neil. Neil, how's things? Had a haircut for the show today?
I did indeed. Nicely fresh shaved about half an hour ago.
We can all tell.
Good. I'm all shiny and fresh.
He's always all shiny and fresh. That's the secret.
So for our regular viewers and also for new viewers who might be watching over on the WTC Facebook page, hello everyone, welcome to the show. Today's show is going to be the first of us trying something out, which is going to be very, very fun. There is a WTC style event, so that's teams of 8 playing. Obviously, they're playing on TTS, but it does mean that they're going to be playing like games of 40k as viable, pretty much as on the tabletop, which is super fun. And it means we're going to be looking at those teams. We're going to be looking at the lists. We're also going to be looking at some of the information that's coming from the event. And Tom and Neil as one of the head judges and organisers of the WTC for 40k, and Tom as my de facto expert and wizard on anything related to Team 40k, but not haircuts, is the man in the field. Yeah.
I've got more hair than both of you combined, and it's very impressive.
Yeah,
to be fair, that is true.
So, one of the interesting things about WTC is teams of 8, and how those teams of 8 play each other is the pairings phase. But we're going to talk about that's going to be the main focus of the show today. But Neil, do you want to tell us about the event that we're going to be covering?
Yeah, so over the past few months, a lot of the WTC teams have been doing scrims on their TTS against each other, just like friendly matchups, just getting some games in and practicing, and it snowballed into the Greeks, the French, and the Poles got together with a little bit of help with the Germans, who the Germans have been running a singles event on TTS, and they got together and decided, let's do a team event, let's do a winter WTC team event. And so that's basically what they've done. They put the shout out. They've got a lot of teams involved, quite a few of the sort of the big regular WC teams involved, and a load of new people as well. I mean, there's an Australian team. There are guys from Japan, America playing. It's really good.
Okay, and a lot of people won't need the introduction to what the WTC 40k is, but just in case, very quickly, WTC 40k is the child. Is it the child? Is it the evolution? Evolution sounds better. The evolution from the 40k the ETC 40k ETC, which was teams of 8, which went for how many years before it moved to the WTC, Neil?
Oh God, I think the first one with 40k was in 2007. Okay. And we split away officially in 2020, so that'll be 13 years.
Okay, very cool. And you've been involved in WTC for?
I've been involved since 2009.
Okay,
so
sweet.
A long time. And I can only think of like 3 people who have been involved longer than me, and that's Gaz Jones, who's the Welsh captain, Vladi, who is one of the mainstay Polish players, and Skark, who's another big Polish player. I think they're the only other guys who've been to every event.
Okay. Well, now, Tom, you've been to lots of these events, both as a player, for many teams. Talk us through your history, quick bit.
Yeah, sure. So I first went to the ETC, as it was known then, in 2016. So I haven't been around nearly as long as Neil has. I merked for Team Ireland in that one and was playing Eldar in 7th edition. I then merked for Canada in 2018, and I then went with Wales in 2019, and I've been with Wales ever since then. I have tried to attend as many of the individual team tournaments in the UK as I can, which are mainly 4-player events. Mm-hmm. But we also have an event called the Six Nations, which is run between the 6 teams around the UK and Belgium. So it's like Northern Ireland, and then Scotland, England, Wales, Belgium, and then that's now evolved into the Home Nations Championship. So we invite 2 other teams. So last year we had Denmark and the Netherlands come over and join us, and it's like a kind of practice mini WTC a couple of months before the submission. So effectively I get double the practice in pairings, just because we end up with another 8-player team event, and this kind of creates a similar vibe, because you end up with another event where you're able to practice 8-player team pairings and really test out some ideas that you might have for your team going forwards.
So that's the interesting thing, actually, that you've just hit on there. And that obviously gives Tom some credence to be talking about, and Neil, obviously, some credence about what we're going to be talking about today. So the event, Greekhammer WTC format TTS event, there are 3 other names for it.
Way too many.
Yeah, it's a bit like Daenerys. You don't need to know all of the names, right?
Yeah. I think everyone's just referring to it as the Greekhammer tournament.
Yeah,
That works. That works. But 32 teams of 8 players. Now, the interesting bit for people who are maybe new to this is the pairing process. Tom, can you take us through how the pairing process works?
Sure. It might sound a bit weird when I say it rather than show it, but I'll do my best. If you want a good example, you can always go and look at the Super Series pairings because they are very, very similar to how this works. So what essentially happens is both teams put down one of their 8 armies in secret. They then flip them over, and the other team gets to pick 2 potential armies for the army that was just put down by the other team to play against. So let's say I put down my secret army. I'll then flip it over, and then the other team will pick 2 armies for that army that I just put down to play against.
And those roles are the individual card
Yes.
the individual army you put down is always called the defender, and
We
the
call
2
that the
that you
defender.
put, and the other 2 that you attack with are, of course,
The attackers.
the attackers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I will pick for my defender one of those 2 attackers to play against, and then I will pick a board for my defender to defend. The other army that I don't pick then goes back into my opponent's hand, and we repeat the process until we get to the end where a couple of armies are left over, and then they play against each other.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Neil, you've seen this done across multiple teams across multiple years. And it's obviously, I would say, the unique selling point I really do feel of team events. How important is it? Is it just like you just kind of throw some stuff together, it's not a thing, or is it like the crux of the event?
You can lose the round on your pairings if you're not prepped your pairings properly, if you're not taking it seriously, and you go up against a team that has, you're going to end up with going into unfavorable matchups across the board, and your team's just going to get their faces shoved in. Basically, it is what teams, the top teams, put an huge amount of time and energy into, like theory hammering the different matchups, different connotations, different permutations and possibilities there. There are guys that actually have created and programmed dedicated apps to help them do this. Look at percentages and chances. I mean, Tom, how many hundreds of hours you put into like pre-pairings over the year?
So when I worked at the county council and we had a 4-player team event, I literally just ran an Excel spreadsheet in my spare time where I would just run every single eventuality in pairings, and I would work out what the best pairing strategy was based off of the opposing team making optimal choices. And we had a team that was it wasn't the strongest team, but we came top 2 at every event we went to, including Clash of Lions, which is England's resident practice 4-player team tournament. So we did actually very well, despite a suboptimal team in terms of how strong we were compared to the other teams player by player. But we still did very, very well just off the back of pairings. On the flip side, when we played at the Six Nations, as it was back then in Cork in 2018 in Wales, this was Wales it wasn't the peak of its power, but it was still a very, very strong Welsh team. And we played against Belgium, who were at the time considered one of the weaker teams of the 6. And when we finished our pairings and we simulated how many points we'd predicted out of it, we had 51 out of 160. We really should have got absolutely battered just on the level of pairings that we produced. In the end, we didn't. We managed to clutch out a couple of games, but at the same time, you can see the data. It was very, very close. We should have really been winning that by a whole lot more, but we struggled because our pairings were bad. And the pairings there's an absolutely huge amount of difference to the round.
Yeah, Tom, I appreciate that. I was just going to say there's a strong argument, and Neil, a bit of a criticism, I think, directed at team tournaments that really they've only been created because everyone who likes Warhammer genuinely loves spreadsheets, and it's just more opportunity to use more spreadsheets. Any comment on that criticism, or?
The fact that I stopped being a captain and stopped playing to avoid the spreadsheets is probably says I agree with that statement.
It's because we increased the number of spreadsheets and Neil couldn't hack it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, when I started at ETC, it was literally like 5 minutes before the round started. You were looking at the opposition list, you're going, I can beat that, I can't beat that. And it's gone from there as the events evolve and become much more competitive, and there's been much more, on the line, much more people getting heavily invested in it. It's gone from literally just, eeny, meeny, miny, mo to, as I said, I think Nick Rose, who works for, correct from wrong, works for Dell, actually has created a computer program that was doing the pairings for the Americans. It was like using AI, using statistical analysis programs to create a system whereby it's telling them what their most favorable pairings are based on what's going on.
Isn't it nice that 40k has that much data to crunch? That's
Yeah.
a lovely experience.
That's the only
for
reason why
everyone.
we get an FAQ, Rob. You don't get an FAQ. So don't go into it.
But at the same time, you can still do what some teams do. I absolutely love it when they do it. They just get, because they'll just people make like lovely little cards to the pairings, have like little cards they're doing armies on, and some teams just go, let's just deal out the cards and see who matches up.
Yeah.
So you can go that way as well.
That's how we did it.
So
in
one of the
2016.
last things, this is just because this is the first episode that we're doing this for. I thought it would be good to explain it all and introduce the hosts. Quick one before we move on to talk about the actual team and the teams and the events and the pairing that we decided to look at today. Is that also when you're pairing into boards, when you're doing these pairing systems, there's also at the WTC and in WTC format events different density of terrain on boards, and that takes that's quite an important part as well, right, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, me and Neil do a secondary podcast that's kind of adjacent to this called the WTC Squadcast. And a few months ago, we had the Australians on. And me and Eric LaForest went absolutely nuts for about half an hour just about how you pair your armies and you pick your armies based upon what boards you're going to be getting. And we have got some new experimental boards in the works for this event. So it's going to be interesting to see how teams are going to manage those and use those with regards to their pairings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Very interesting. But just for simple terms, there's medium, there's heavy, medium, and light density terrain boards. Yeah.
There is, but I would say that even the light density terrain boards still have 12 obscuring ruins.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
It's not light as in what it used to be back in 8th and 7th. You know. I think the density of the boards, what increases on the boards is the amount of like craters, woods, small barricades, things that are going to obstruct you even more than just the ruins themselves.
Yeah. Okay, all right. So the Greekhammer 40k event, 32 teams. Now, obviously, the thing that is inhuman to do would be to go through 32 times 8 lists for 40k.
Yeah. Though to be fair, when it comes to the ETC proper as the head ref, I have to do that.
Yes.
To check everyone's actually got the correct list, and it is horrible.
Well, and good luck on that journey for you, Neil. I'll never join you. Next week I think we're going to start looking at the meta for the event as well, and I think that's going to be a fun little thing. We'll put that together for next week. But for this week, Neil, could you tell us about some of the notable teams and people that have turned up to play this event? I mean, number one, great that everyone is using TTS to keep this thing alive. Everyone's keeping the game going and out there. Like that, I mean, obviously that's a great tool that we've all got during this lockdown. The actual WTC might be happening this year still in Austria. Yeah, fingers crossed. So that'll be the physical version of the WTC, and obviously it was meant to happen last year. But who's turned up? Like who's come to the party prepped?
I mean, I'll just roll down the list. You've got like Ukraine, Spain. You've got Poland, you've got some teams from France, Australia. The Germans are dropping 2 teams, and one of them's got some really, really good players that have come back into 40k. Simon Erding and Caillou, guys who won the ETZ multiple times. You've got Canada, the Swiss, Team England, the reigning champions are there. The Italians have got 2 teams. The Greeks, there's a lot of
Polish have a load of teams as well, don't they?
A lot of us. Yeah, the Polish have even got a team with the Greeks. There's a lot of very established teams involved. And then there's some new guys, Vanguard Tactics, Steve Box's crew. They've actually put a team in there. And there's a few other people like, would be people who are playing a lot of TTS want to do it, or people who are interested in getting involved with WTC that joined in. So there's a lot of sharks in this pool, that's for sure.
Okay, yeah, good. Nice to see. And competitive wargaming in the chat said Germans actually have 4 teams and 1 mix, so they're representing. The WTC World Team Championships, normally it's people from all across the world, right? That's the thing. So this is the Greekhammer 40k event is what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we decided to look at one of the matches today, because it's our first time doing this, so we're going to give it a whirl. One of the matches today. Neil, Tom, why is it we chose the match that we're looking at?
So I think I gave Tom the options, and I went for this one because we're going to look at, and I can see Warboss Reese is in the chat.
Yeah,
we're going to be looking at Stonks.
Team Stonks, Neil.
Team Stonks.
Very official.
This is the honest war game, and we're talking about Stonks versus the semi croissants, which in French means the semi crispies. They are a really one of the serious contenders for the French ETC team. In France, they pick their team based off a series of team events. They run throughout the entire year, and the best team becomes the WTC team. And these guys are serious contenders.
Yeah, I mean, I played the Semi-Crystal Lance at the Belgian Team Championships in 2020, and I think we just beat them, but it was very, very close. We might have drawn actually, but it was a
So
very, very close round. Good team.
one of the interesting things I thought that when we looked at something like the Nopen, or as Neil you've been telling me several times, is lots of these countries that everyone to a degree speaks English, which is lovely, and WTC, the language of the event, is English. However, there are huge communities who are in some cases non-English speaking in Spain and France and Russia and Poland and all over the world, who obviously have their own media output with their own in their own languages for their own communities, which I think is excellent and is super cool. And it's really nice to be able to talk about those in the on an English channel or a European channel, whatever. But most importantly, in English to get it out to the world, right? So all these sharks playing in their French meta. It's nice to be able to hear about some of these superstars and push that out to the rest of the world. I think that's a fun, hopefully with a glue. Between all of these different communities. That's what we're looking to be, which is super nice. Is there a long history of the French team doing really, really well?
I believe they've never won the event, but they've podiumed a lot. And I think a good way to sum it up is we actually did interview with the Italians, me and Tom, for our podcast. Less about that episode though, because it turned out to be a disaster. But when we were talking to the Italians, it was very interesting. They talked about that the French are a team that they look at because France for a while was sort of middling tier country, and then they really got into competitive team play became a big deal in the country. It's the main way they play 40k in France now is team play. And by really getting behind that and getting behind the idea they want to create a really strong team-based community to win the WTC, they've gone from being a middling team to being a serious contender every year. They've not quite hit first place, but they've done a multiple podiums since doing this.
Okay.
So they are definitely a team that when you talk about the big teams, where people you look out for, France is always in that conversation now.
But not getting out of groups at the WTC.
Oh wow! Okay, some smack talk on the chat. Breaking Heads 40k says the French have a huge team tournament running right now too. So, like you said, Neil, team tournament seems to be the way that it gets played over in France.
And to be fair, in Europe, like Spain, team tournaments are the main way. Italy, team tournaments are the main way. A lot of Europe pretty much only plays team tournaments now because they just see it as a much more fun way to partake in competitive 40k.
I mean, as an Englishman, obviously that level of union scares me, but more on that later. Tom, should we talk about? I mean, that's a funny joke, Tom. I'm making it.
I
you set me up. I'm taking the shot. Tom, what are the 8 lists for both teams? Have you got that to hand? Just what are the factions that we're seeing play?
Yeah, I can absolutely go down that. I just need to pull up the other document because I was looking at my other document. Basically, there's a lot of documents. As you alluded to earlier, we love our spreadsheets. So we do have, for the Semi-Crystal Lance, we have the captain, he's Olivier. He's playing White Scars, and that is a bunch of Vanguard veterans, the classic. It also happens to have a unit of 10 Assault Terminators in there. He's then got Edouard playing a Word Bearer's army for his Chaos Space Marines, which has a lot of possessed in it, very, very durable units. Third list is a Sister Battle list. It looks pretty standard to me. Transfer Catherine for the Miracle Dice farming. Lots of Repentia, very, very good at trading units in the midboard. The fourth list is an Imperial Guard list. Now, this one's a little bit weird to me, but it's got a bit of a mix of Astra Militarum and Imperial Knights in there. So we've got a lot of Knight Moiraxes backed up by 3 squads of Death Corps cavalry, and then a couple of Manticores, a couple of tank commanders to back it up with damage. The fifth list is a Harlequins list. It looks pretty standard to me. It does have 2 squads of 5 Skyweavers rather than going for a full player horde in there. So it's pretty standard down the middle Harlequins list rather than going for either of the extremes. The sixth list is a Chaos Demons list. And rather than going for the horde dynamic here as well, they have also gone again for the big demons. So we've got Shalaxi Hexbane in there. You've got 3 Exalted Keepers of Secrets and an Exalted Lord of Change. And then you've got 1 Bloodletter Bomb and then a lot of little troops units running around, including 3 squads of Nurglings, 3 squads of Demonettes, and 2 Fiends. You then have, for their next list, a Death Guard list. Now, this one caught me a little bit by surprise because it's not something I expected. And as we've been talking about Death Guard a lot over the last couple of weeks, there's a few units in here that I didn't expect to see. You've got your couple of Plague Burst Crawlers. You've got 2 of them there. You've got your Poxwalkers. You've got 3 squads of Death Shroud Terminators to unlock those Poxwalkers, a couple of characters. But you've also got Mortarion in there. And, Rob, you've got a unit of Chaos Spawn.
No,
listen,
if you guys haven't listened to Honest Wargaming before, the Chaos Spawn have been a meme for a while. Tom, big fan.
They're not a meme. They are legit, okay?
And I've got to say, when I see Mortarion, I just think to myself, that's like so many more Death Shrouds. That's almost 10 Death Shrouds. You got 10 more Death Shrouds. What are you playing at, guys?
I mean, come on. We'll see how it goes, I guess, Neil. I mean... Maybe it'll make it. Maybe it'll make the run. And then you've got, then we've got another Imperial soup here, but it's mainly Adeptus Custodes. But we have got some Sisters of Silence in here. So the Sisters of Silence have 2 squads of 5 Vigilators for the 4 people in the chat who know what they are, and a squad of 5 Witch Seekers. And then you've got Trajan, a Shield Captain on bike with all of the toys, and then you've got a banner, a Vexillus Praetor. And that has 1 squad of 5 Aquilon Custodians, 1 squad of 3 Agmatus Custodians, and 2 squads of 5 Venatari, which I believe are the Flyy boys.
Yeah, they're the jump back guys.
Yeah, they're fast. So that rounds out the Semi-Crystallance team.
So that's the French team. That's the French team.
And just a quick one about the last list there. I got some inside information off Olivia that list, they literally threw it together the day before the submission because they were still struggling for like what to do for the last list. Because I mean, the player, Arnaud, his name is Shazo Kassad. You know, he plays Tau. He's known for playing Tau, and as we all know, Tau suck right now.
They do suck. So you're not allowed to play them in a team tournament because you'll let your entire team down.
Can I just bring something up just for the people listening at home? There's an important point about team composition and army restrictions, right? In that once you've chosen a faction, you can't choose that faction again.
Correct. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So then you've got back to the very base level in terms of you have to pick 8 different factions, so you can't take a book more than once. But then you have teams that kind of build into certain ideas of how they like to create their teams. I've talked a little bit about how terrain has a massive faction. You build certain lists for certain boards. One of the other examples is how you often double up on archetypes. So we've talked a lot about archetypes on the Honest Wargamer for those who don't know. For example, let's say I have a Horde army. Well, you could take 2 Horde armies, and then if someone puts a defender down that's bad into hordes, you just lob 2 hordes into it, and they've got to take a horde. So you basically are pinning things with 2 similar attackers. We haven't really seen too much of this in this matchup, but there are a couple of other things going on.
Honestly, Tom, it's what makes the pairing process. We're about to go through the pairing process in a minute after Tom's done the next team's list. But once you go through it, your mind's going to race. If you've never done this before, for all the guys who are into it, I think that's why all the guys who are out watching this now, who already do it, they're in love with this style of gaming.
I love the pairings. I think it's fantastic. Yeah. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but I love the pairings process. I think it adds so much to the game, makes it so interesting.
Mm-hmm. So now, Team Stonks, I'm genuinely interested in their lists. Yeah.
All right. So let's see how many stonky units we can see that in here where you're going to buy them for low cost and then they're going to be sold high when this team finally wins the event. Okay. So that's the aim. Now, the first army is an Adeptus Custodes army, okay?
Oh, so bad, Tom.
Okay, shut up, Neil. It's got a shield captain, but he's not on a bike. He's in a Lurus Terminator armor, and he's covered in toys, and he's just running around, okay? We've then got 3 squads of Custodian Guard, but these aren't just Custodian Guard. These are chunky units of Custodian Guard. You've got 2 squads of 10 and 1 squad of 8. It's a lot of Custodian Guard. 28 of those bad boys running around the board. You've got so many, Rob, you need 2 banners. You need 2 Vexillus Praetors. They've got 2 different banners, but they're 2 banners all the same.
Yeah, they got the -1 to hit, just one attack one, haven't they?
Exactly, to make sure you're getting as many attacks out of that massive chunky unit of Custodians as physically possible. And then you've got 2 Palace Grav attack tanks, I think. Now, those aren't the floaty boys that I was complaining about for about 6 months in 8th edition, which means that they must be stonks, because if I haven't heard of them, that means they're only going up.
They're the medium. They're not the transport. They're not the heavy. They're the medium. Yeah.
They're the ones in between. That's fine. Yeah. Now, speaking of units I've never heard of, the second army is Astra Militarum. So you've got 2 company commanders. Pretty standard. I've got Kurov's Aquila, I've got Relic of Lost Cadia, all grudges, all the standard stuff you like to kit them out with. You've got 6 squads of infantry, 1 mini command squad. I am assuming that's for standing on objectives and what have you. You've then got 4 basilisks broken down into a squad of 3 and a squad of 1. And then you've got, well, I've just broken the page. And then you've got 1 Manticore. And then you've got 3 Marauder bombers with Inferno bombs.
And what do those do, Tom?
No, I've researched this. Yeah, I prepared this earlier. I didn't, mate. I've got my actual book over here, mate. I'm doing a lot of research. So the Marauder bombers can drop 1 bomb whenever they go over something, and they drop it down, and everything within 9 inches on a 4+, it takes D3 mortal wounds. So effectively, you've got 6 of those. On average, each one is going to be doing 1 mortal wound to each unit it hits, right? Because it's a 4+, then the average on a D3 is 2. So there's the potential for a lot of mortal wounds out here, but it's not too likely. But what makes them kind of good is that they're very annoying. They are toughness 7, but they've got 20 wounds and a 3-up save, 320 points. So those things are going to be sticking around and causing some massive issues. And if they can get the right pairings, it's going to cause some issues.
They are massive, though. I see Pierre. Yeah. Is it Pierre in the
I'm
chat?
going to be honest. I don't even know what it looks like.
Yeah, Rob, that's it. Pierre is the semi-crispies captain, actually. But yeah, they are perfect. Way too big.
Yeah, they're huge.
Welcome to the show. Yeah, they're massive. Yeah, please continue.
You've then got Jack, who's playing the Necrons for the 3rd list. That's got a Catacomb Command Barge. It is running Relentlessly Expansion List and Eternal Conquerors, which are the standard Necron secondary choices, as we were talking about on Thursday. So that is, you can move 6 inches before the game starts, and you are objective secured on all your units. You've got a squad of 5 Immortals with Ghost Blasters, 1 squad of 5 Flayed Ones, and then you've got a Transcendent Catan in that first attachment, followed by 2 Locust Heavy Destroyers. And again, that's Stonks units because they are very rare. You've got a second attachment with the same secondary detachment choices. You've then got a Chronomancer with the Veil of Darkness, a Catan Shard of the Nightbringer, which is useful in team events. Again, it's about getting it into the right pairings. Then you've got a unit of 5 Death Marks, 3 squads of 5 Canoptic Scarab Swarms, and then 3 squads of Canoptic Wraiths, 2 of 5, 1 of 3, and then a 3rd Locust Heavy Destroyer. So we haven't gone all the way on the triple Catan build, which has been seeing a lot of play specifically in scrims, but we are kind of towards that end. I'm looking forward to seeing how the Locust Heavy Destroyers do, though.
Okay, and that's cool. And that's all of our lists, right?
No, that's the 3rd list for them.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
I just want to get to the pairings. That's where I'm at.
So the 4th list for them is a Grey Knight list being played by an individual called the Frosty Towel. That's got a Chaplain, a Librarian, Keldor Drago, and an Apothecary with a very unique way of setting up their characters. I'm not sure I'd have done the same, but I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes. You've got 3 squads of 5 Strike Marines with Vortex of Doom. You've got 1 10-man Paladin squad with the Astral Aim Psychic Power, and 1 squad of 10 Purifiers with Nemesis Warding Staves, which we'll get into a little bit later. You've got 1 squad of 4 Servitors, an Interceptor squad, which is a little bit smaller. It's only 6-man Interceptor squad. And then you've got 3 Purgation squads, which are one of the most underrated units in the Grey Knight book, all with Gate of Infinity and Silencers, which I very, very much like. Then you've got Ash playing Sisters of Battle. It looks pretty standard again, although you have more rhinos in this one, and you've also got 2 squads of 3 mortifiers in there. Mortifiers are very interesting. I really like mortifiers. They're good for pushing up and really clearing things off objectives. Then you are moving on to Chris Helgren, who's playing a Drukhari list. We talked a little bit about this Drukhari list potentially popping up because it's the Rak Horde, Rob. It's got Drazhar, the only Phoenix Lord who has ever seen play in any team event over the last 10 years. We've got 6 squads of 10 Raks with 2 artifactors each, 1 Clawed Fiend. I do love my 1 Clawed Fiend. And then you're running a Craftworld Asayani detachment with Expert Crafters and Masters of Concealment. You've got a Farseer, you've got an Autarch, you've got 3 squads of 5 Rangers, and then you've got the only 2 units that can reliably score you Scramblers, and it's the only excuse for ever taking that secondary. And it is 2 squads of 5 Warp Spiders. They are backed up by 3 squads of 3 D-Cannon support weapons, which are good anti-line of sight shooting with decent AP and damage on them. Going into our last couple of lists, we've got a Space Marine list, which is Space Wolves, run by Sean. That's got a Librarian, Rune Priest, a Lieutenant, Ulrich the Slayer, who is a Wolf Priest or a named Chaplain, effectively. A squad of 5 Assault Intercessors, 4 squads of Blood Claws, 4 Drop Pods, 4 Blood Claws, a squad of 5 Blade Guard Veterans, a Judiciar, Lucas the Trickster, 3 squads of 5 Fenrisian Wolves, and then finally you've got a Harlequins list, which is pretty similar to the one we talked about earlier, except you've got 2 squads of 5 Skyweavers again, missing his efficacy for points. And then you've got 6 squads of troops, 2 bigger ones of 10, 3 of 6, 1 of 5. And then you've got the double troop master, Shadow Seer, and the 5-star Weaver. So that's a pretty standard Harlequin list. And that is all 16 lists that we'll be seeing.
Well done, Tom. Take a breath.
Appreciate that. I think our notes for end of the show will be next time just say Space Marines. I think, but we'll
or tell people to read the list before they tune in.
But good work there. Right, so let's move into the pairings. So
absolutely.
Don't forget, this is just one match of 16 matches. So there are 32 teams playing. So there are 16 matches. Round 1 ends, Neil, on Wednesday, right?
That's correct. Yeah, round 1 ends on Wednesday. And then next round will start on Thursday.
And there are 5 rounds to get a winner.
So we are running all the way through until the 5th of April is the final day for the final round.
Yeah, there we go. So we're going to be, hopefully, I think we're probably going to be covering this every Sunday. That's the plan, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to that. So you guys should be able to see us every Sunday night. So let's look at this. So I've got the pairings sheet up for game 1, or pairings 1, most importantly. Tom, do you want to take us through what we're seeing here?
So what happened first was the Semi-Crustalance put down by Defender, and the reason why we're talking about this first is because the Semi-Crustalance won the roll-off to see who picks the first board. So effectively, if you win the roll-off, you pick the first table, so your first Defender gets to pick first. Then the next 2 tables are selected by the Defenders from the other team, and then the next 2 by you, and so on and so forth. So Semi-Crustalance won the roll-off, and so they get to pick the board first. So they stuck down their Defender and they put down their Chaos Demons list. So if you remember, that was the list with the 3 exalted Keepers of Secrets, the named Keeper of Secrets, and the named Lord of Change. And the 2 lists that were put up against that were the Grey Knights, which we talked about a little bit earlier, and the Eldari list, which was a mix of Drakari and of the Asayani.
Yeah, so just straight off the bat, Neil, the first thing I feel is I put Demons down as the Defender. Grey Knights come at me to attack. That's not going to be the one I choose in my brain. Like, I mean, it feels like not the right pairing.
No, especially because you're putting Demons down first. As Tom talked about, we talked to the Australians. You're putting Demons down first because those 4 big keepers, they need to have space to move. So you want to make sure they're on a board they can move around on. So that's why they're going down first. But you don't pick Grey Knights. Surely you don't pick Grey Knights versus Demons because Grey Knights is designed to kill Demons. You go with the Craft or Jakari list and just let the keepers eat racks all day long.
Well, I think the most interesting thing about this is like you pointed out. Me and Tom did a show on the Honest War Game maybe close to a year ago now, where we discussed pairings and team composition and also army composition. And it was interesting. Tom's point was, it's always the board that's more interesting than it is... it's always the board that's more important than it is necessarily who you play into or what army you play into in some cases. And like you've just pointed out there, those Keeper of Secrets need some room to breathe. And so, yeah, they got the choice between choosing between Grey Knights and Harlequins. Tom, do you want to take us through what happened?
So the Demons picked up the Grey Knights. They decided not to go against the Eldari list with the 60 racks. And I feel like that's because you can end up getting very restricted by those racks quite easily. Also, if you are picking board into Grey Knights, I feel like there are a lot of advantages that you can pick up, right? So if you're picking against Grey Knights, you end up picking a board with a bunch of trees on it because trees don't care about your astral aim. Trees do a massive number on Grey Knights specifically because they give you that -1 to be hit, and they also restrict the Grey Knight movements a ton because now you're moving about the same range as a pile-in move with your Terminators. Not that this list has too many Terminators. In terms of the Demons versus Grey Knights list matchup, it's probably the 2 archetypes that go most unfavorably for the Grey Knights. The Demons aren't really stacking high numbers of wounds, and the Grey Knights are kind of a bit more MSU-y rather than going for something like a bunch of bricks of Terminators or Paladins, which means they can fire out those smites, although they are restricted a little bit more by the removal of Brotherhood of Psychers, which means that they are now taking the penalty every time they do a smite. So specifically when Grey Knights smite Demons, they do 3 mortal wounds rather than 1, which you can then buff up to 4 using the Tide of Escalation for the Grey Knights. I think, though, the Demons can always get points out of this, specifically because they do have a way of dealing with Grey Knights. Demons aren't always necessarily a terrible list into Grey Knights, specifically because they have access to the Demonic Incursion stratagem, which is 2 command points when a Demon unit dies at the hands of a Grey Knight unit. And you can bring that unit on at the end of your next movement phase anywhere outside of 9 inches of an enemy unit, which means you can keep recycling these keepers as they go down. The problem you have specifically is they don't have many command points left in this list because they've exalted pretty much everything that they can exalt. So if you can hit these keepers early and these exalted Lord of Changes early, then you are going to have a bit of a problem if you're the demon player because you just don't have the command points to bring them back. But equally, I don't think it can take the Eldari mix list just because it pins it in so much and it's going to be like a 19-1 by the end of it.
Yeah. Neil, any thoughts on this matchup?
No, I was going to say I agree with Tom. You know, you think Grey Knights would be good because they've been bringing stuff back, but he's starting with only 3 CP, so he's realistically never going to be using that power. I don't know. I still think the Eldari won't be good because you're going to be moving up the board quick enough to get you're going to stop the Eldari pinning you in too much. Those racks aren't that fast.
Yeah.
So you're going to be getting into the grind quickly. You'll be having, you've got the initiative, but essentially with the speed of the keepers, and you're going to be grinding those Eldari out, but they're not going to really be grinding you out either.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the Grey Knights have, like you say, they can just mortal wound you off the board so easily.
Interesting. Oh, Bacon Head seems to agree. So do we have the results from this matchup yet, or is this a match that's happening and we're waiting to see the results for next week?
I think we do have.
We've actually got all the results for all the matches.
Okay, so let's do it
except Olivia's, because Olivia's useless.
Let's do it game by game because this is interesting. So don't forget, in this case, Demons go down as a defender. They choose the matchup versus Grey Knights. How did this match end up?
It was a 14-6 win to the Grey Knights. So Stonks took the win. Getting 14 points of the game. Which, to be fair, getting 6 as a first defender is really good. That's not a bad effort.
Could you explain out to me what that might mean, Neil?
So I say your first defender. So the Demons list was the very first army list that the Semi-Crispies put forward and said, who of Stonks wants to take this on. So you're essentially putting this list down, not knowing who it potentially could face any of the 8 opposing lists. So you essentially look at the first defenders out, and normally the armies, they get quote unquote thrown under the bus. They're going to take really bad matches. And they're not expected to win, but what they will do is hopefully take a bad matchup out of the mix for the other teams. Maybe the Grey Knights. Maybe a Grey Knights were picked because Grey Knights was seen as a tougher match for other armies in the mix-up. And if you remove the Grey Knights from future pairings, it obviously clears the board for you to get more favourable matchups.
Yeah, and you say how it was a win as well, Rob. It really depends upon what you're expecting from that matchup, right? You could have paired that matchup together expecting the Demons to get, for example, 2 points, right? Which theoretically, individually, in a singles game, it's not a win. In fact, it's quite a heavy defeat. But now if you turn up with 6 points, you have got more points than your team expected, and suddenly you're closer to achieving that magic 86 points you need to win the round.
Yeah, again, for everyone, because obviously it's part of a team composition. And again, when they're talking about points, it's a 20-0 system, so there's an aggregate of the scoring. So the scoring in the game produces a different scoring. Neil, do you want to quickly catch us up on that? Or Tom, do you want to catch us up on that?
Tom, can you do that? I was just in the middle of replying to break.
Sorry, I was changing some lists. Can you repeat the question? Sorry, Rob.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, mate.
Could you just quickly, because someone would be like, oh, they won, was it 14-6? Is that what it was?
Yes, it was 14-6.
That seems weird, because that's quite a low-scoring game in 40k. Explain that to people.
Yeah, so the WTC still goes off the old countback system of points differential. So you score your match as per the rule book. So you might get a score of 70 to 90 or 42 to 66 or whatever. And then what you do is you compare the differential between those two scores, and basically divide the differential by 5. So if you've won the game, if you've got a differential of 20 points in your favour, then divide by 5, that's 4, and that means that you're going to be getting, if the round is the match of 20 points, if it's a draw, it's 10-10. Because the differential is 20, it's equal to 4 points. So one player gets 4 points, he goes to 14. The other player loses 4 points, he goes to 6.
Okay. I told you, people love spreadsheets, guys. This is a thing. Scoring is not enough. But so the important point there is bringing back those 6 points as the first defender. So if people have never accessed team events before, being the first defender is arguably the hardest role in the army. Would you say, Tom?
It's under the bus.
In the team,
it's under the bus.
Yeah,
most of the time you just end up there.
Okay, it's a tough one. So coming away with any points generally seen as a positive, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And in fact, that's kind of demonstrated in our next pairing as well. So am I okay to move on about Rob, or do you want to talk about
Sure.
this one?
It's on the
Absolutely
screen
fine.
right now.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So Team Stonks put down their Astra Militarum as their defender, and that was the list where you had the abundance of ignore line of sight shooting, which was 4 basilisks, 1 manticore, and then you also had the 3 marauder bombers, which are very, very good at just dropping mortal wounds all over the army and then just flying around buildings and also getting line of sight. So you can't really hide from it too much. And in response, the Semi-Crucial Lance put down their own Astra Militarum, and they put down Adeptus Custodes. Now, there's 2 theories on why I think the Stonks picked the Adeptus Custodes here. I think the first one is a little misguided in that they saw the Custodes, they saw a small number of a small unit size on each of the units, and thought they could mortal wound off the board. I think that's incorrect. I think the second possibility is that they saw the Astra Militarum mirror matchup and they couldn't deal with it, because remember, all those Moiraxes break down into individual units. You've got units of 5 units of 1 there, and then you've got a buttload of extra shooting that can really clear through that guard screen of 60 bodies and then just run down the rest of your army. And I think that's probably why they picked the Adeptus Custodes here.
Okay. Yeah, Neil, got any thoughts on this matchup?
I totally agree. I mean, those Moiraxes, for people who don't know what they do, a lot of people remember the Moiraxes. They were played a lot at the end of 8th Ed with the double lightning locks, the extra hits. But these Rad Cleanse, the Rad Cleanse and the Siege Claw is the key there. Because the Siege Claw, you're getting bonus attacks, you do a lot of extra damage there. The Rad Cleanser is a flamer, and they're actually very, very good at just churning through chaff units.
Yes.
Very, very quickly, churn through them really well, and all those guards will be taken out straight away. And also, in melee, they're also doing, the hitting tags is strength 12, AP 3, damage D6.
Yeah, it's a lot of damage.
And if they're attacking a vehicle, they also get +2 to the damage. So it's D6 +2 in combat against vehicles. So those Moiraxes are super fast. They're going to rush straight at the board. They're going to clean out those screens straight away and eat all those tanks.
Yeah. It's just, you just can't deal with it. Whereas at least the Custodes, although I don't think you can kill the Custodes very, very quickly, because you're -1 to hit, and if you average out the number of the bombs, then you kill 2 Custodes per squad. You're not wiping out those squads either, but equally, they're going to take a while to chew through those 60 guardsmen, and it makes it very, very difficult to get all the points from you. So at least then, if you take the Custodes, you can get some points back for your team.
Okay, sweet. So what did the result end up as for these 2 teams?
Scrolling back up.
So I believe it was 15 points to the Custodes and 5 points to the Astra Militarum there. So it was 15-5 to the Semi-Crucial Lance.
So both first defenders doing really well in this situation. Both
we got 11 points
5
together.
Points.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. So this is the Stonks first defender. So this is important. Okay, and then one of the roles I think of the first defender obviously is to take out some of the aggressive lists or one of the attacking lists that you don't want to see later on, right?
Yeah.
So getting those 5 and 6 points, pretty impressive. So interestingly, there both defenders lost in brackets, but they got less points.
Yeah, but to be fair, you normally expect the defenders to lose their first round. If a defender, one of the first defenders is winning their game, something has either gone monstrously wrong in the game, or something has gone monstrously wrong in the pairings. Because you should be, as the attacker, getting 2 favourable matchups and force them to pick, between a rock and a hard place, really.
Yeah, or you're playing against a Russian list, which is just weird and confusing.
But then it's going to get crunchy as we get towards the middle. Okay, so over onto table 4, we then have the second defender for the Stonks. Is that right?
Yeah. So that is the third game on table 4, because that's the one they picked for clarity for the guys who are watching. And the both teams actually here, they both used the Harlequins as defenders, which are very similar Harlequin lists, but it's interesting to see them both using them in a similar role on that second defender when you've eliminated a couple of lists here. So Team Stonks were the next team to pick a board, because the Semi-Crucial Lance picked the first board of the first defenders. And they got the option of picking between the Semi-Crucial Lance Space Marine Army, which is the White Scars army with the squad of 10 Assault Terminators, 2 squads of 10 Vanguard Vets, or the Death Guard army. And they decided to go for the Death Guard. So the Death Guard army was the one with, it had Mortarion, 3 squads of Death Shroud Terminators, and the 1 squad of Spawn, which are obviously the MVPs.
I feel this is a massive favourable matchup for the Harlequins in this situation.
I'm not sure, because I feel like the Death Guard really wants a castle, and that makes it kind of tricky for the Harlequins. And if you hit a unit, great, you're hitting like one unit, maybe you're hitting two units. You're not really removing too much from the Death Guard army if you just walk up and just kind of push things, because it's actually very, very hard for Harlequins to remove Mortarion without charging him. So you end up just walking up the board, you get the points on the side, but you're not really holding the center. So I think it ends up being kind of close.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I mean, we did a sorry, Rob. We did a Team Sweden practice weekend a few weekends ago. So the guys from Stockholm came down, including Daniel, the captain, and he was running Harlequins, and he played against Jimmy's Death Guard, and he actually played against my Custodians, and Custodians operate at Silhouette's Death Guard. They have these big, chunky, hard elite units to castle up, and he had the mobility to control the board, but basically nothing could deal with the block of Death Guard, the block of Custodians. I totally agree with Tom there. And I think the reason they picked the Harlequins picked the Death Guard over the White Scars though is because of that lack of mobility. Because the Death Guard is slow, the Harlequins should be able to control the board. Mortarion is killing things, but he's not killing that much because it's a lot. Mortarion is not that great at murdering lots and lots of units anymore. His attacks are a lot less. He's great at killing big things, but the Harlequins got so much small units, so much small chaff. He's going to wait. He's going to take one round to kill a Starweaver, and then another turn to kill the guys inside. It's just going to take too long for him. So I think the Harlequins definitely thought they had the advantage there, the MSU and the speed, whereas the White Scars obviously are a really fast army and just going to chase the Harlequins down over the board. Well, so I can see why.
We're hearing from Reese in the chat who says that it was actually a bad matchup for the rest of his team, so taking that out. Is the role of second defender like the same as first defender, or is it time to try and switch it up?
Depends on the situation. You are normally expecting to do better. You'll see in the results CZ do better, but you are still looking. You still kind of got the same options. You're still probably going to be taking a couple of bad matches of the team. You're probably still going to at least one of those people that are going to attack you is going to be a negative match for you. And then, like Richard said, Reece said, you can take the bad match out for the team. You still take the bad match out for the team because taking a losing match to make sure everyone else is in the positive is a win result for your team. Because at the end of the day, it's not about what your performance is individually; it's what your performance is as a team.
Absolutely.
Okay, so how did this match end up?
So I believe it was 11-9 to the Death Guard in a specific instance, but I'm just going to double check it.
Close.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Wow, very close.
And that shows that it was a bad match for the rest of the team, but that could have. That score could easily be flipped over. That's a fantastic result as a defender.
Okay, brilliant job. Well done there to Reese, flipping the table there, turning that into an 11-9. So going on to the next game. So this is second defender for the French, if I'm right.
Yes, and they were defending with Harlequins again. And they got the choice. I'll just actually correct myself very quickly. They had the choice of Necrons to play against, or they had Adeptus Auroritas. Now, I don't know how I feel about the Sisters into Harlequins matchup. I feel like the Sisters just trade into you and make it very, very difficult because they are very good at just hitting you wherever, but also they do have that range in the form of the Retributors and the Heavy Bolter Squad that allows them to just take out a couple of transports a turn and then just really restrict you a little bit. Whereas the Necrons are kind of similar to the Death Guard in that I feel like, especially when you're running double Catan with the Nightbringer, you want to bunch up a little bit more and you end up just walking up the board. Also, I think it's very, very difficult for the Harlequins to actually kill you. They have to really commit to kill a full squad of 5 Wraiths or a squad of 5 Scarabs because they have got a large wound count and the toughness value and the invulnerable save of a Wraiths make it very, very tricky for you. So you can't really absolutely smash that castle, even if you absolutely go for it, which you can do if your captain or your coach comes over and says, hey, we're going to need some points. You can take a risk, but it's either you handshake it and you get quite a close game, or you make a massive risk and it just blows up in your face, or you get a load of points. But as you're the defender, you're often just trying to get that stable number of points rather than absolutely push.
Okay, so again, so interesting that both Harlequins have gone in as second defenders. Arguably, Harlequins one of the stronger armies in 40k at the moment right now.
Yeah.
So it's interesting putting like a super strong army in that defender role and looking to turn what might be a tough matchup into. I feel like it's a pivot point, right? Like they're the defenders, but they're also arguably some of the scariest armies on the table. So how did this match end up?
So it ended up as a close one, as we're talking about, with a defender not wanting to force this you too much. And it was a 13-7 to the Stonks, 7 points to the Harlequins, 13 to the Necrons. So I feel like the Harlequin player was specifically told not to push. They didn't need to push for massive points here. And so they were happy to take away their 7 points, which as a defender is still pretty decent. You're still getting some decent points out of that one. But good result for the Necrons as well, because I don't think it's a sure thing.
Very interesting. And then, so now we're going into game 5. I'm pretty certain.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Spot on, mate.
5.
The third defenders. This is where we get into the juice, because because this works a little bit differently. So when you've put the defenders down, you then pick your armies as normal, but then you have like 2 armies in each player's hands. How are you going to pair them up? Well, the 2 armies that were refused, the 2 attackers that were put forward and turned back, play each other. And then the 2 armies that weren't ever put down at all also play each other.
Yeah. I get that. Yeah.
So you have to be very careful with what you pick, because you might pick something, assuming your opponent is going to pick something else, and therefore the army that is refused will get to play the other army that you don't pick. So there's a little bit of a mind gamey section at this point. I really like it.
Okay, nice. And so for third defender for the French team.
The Semi-Crustalants put down their Space Marines as their defender. So that is the White Scars list that they were running. And they have the option of playing against the Adeptus Sororitas or playing against the oh no, I read that wrong. Yeah, the Astro.
No, you read it
Adeptus
right.
Sororitas. I was looking. I was read the wrong Adeptus Sororitas. It looks like they had the option to play against the Adeptus Sororitas or the Adeptus Custodes, and they decided to opt for the Adeptus Custodes, mainly because I think the City Adeptus Sororitas trade very, very well. They specialize in trading the Adeptus Sororitas, right? They'll lob a unit in your face, they will kill your unit, and then they'll lose their unit in return. Now, if you're losing a unit of 10 Vanguard Vets or a unit of 10 Assault Terminators or 1 squad of Retributors or a 1 squad of Repentia, probably not a good trade. You don't really want to trade with that White Scars army. You want to go in, kill something, and walk off again. And therefore, Adeptus Sororitas probably not something you want to hit. So they went for the Adeptus Custodes instead.
Yeah, I totally agree. And especially because the end of the Custodes army is essentially foot base. It's got 2 palaces, 2 very small light. They're basically like slightly better land speeders, so they're not really going to worry the White Scars too much. And what the rest of the army is essentially is 3 blocks Custodes Guard. They're not fast. They're quite chunky and slow. And the White Scars will take ball position and they'll wait till the Assault Doctrine activates. Then they'll go in and they'll go, "Hi, look at all the extra damage you've got," and they'll just crush. Even though you got free up invulnerable, all the damage going through is going to kill the Custodes so quick. Just that amount of damage they can lay in those later turns. That'll be the win there. But we don't know because Olivier is useless. He hasn't won his game yet. Boo to Olivier.
So we don't know the result of this match now.
This is the one match that hasn't been played yet.
It's okay, Neil, because we do know what would have happened if it picked the Adeptus Sororitas.
I'm gonna make you both put your professional skill on the line here. I need you to call the score for me, and next week we're gonna come back to it. Call the scores. So it's the Custodes versus the White Scars. How do you think this is going to play out?
16-4 for Marines.
Ooh.
I'm gonna back it even further. I'm gonna back the father be.
Go full 20. Go do it, Neil. Go on.
I say 18-20.
I was considering going 18-2, but
I think the Custodes will grind points, but they're going to get ground. But the only game they'll grind points, they will lose.
I was considering anywhere between 15-5 and 20-0. But I feel like the Custodes can dig in a little bit. And if they play it like people possessed, they may get a decent number of points. But I'm going to back the Custodes to get 4 points here.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty impressive.
Olivier is not agreeing. OMG, 18 points. How are we going to get it versus this Shield War?
I mean, you've already said he's useless, Neil. That's why I tried to drop 2 more points. Come on.
Yeah, but I've got to say, Olivier is a great guy. He's absolute gentleman, absolute pleasure to hang out with. So therefore, I have to abuse him.
True. I mean, he also has.
So then, third defender for the French
was also Space Marines.
I gotta say, I'm fascinated that there is that linear nature to it. That second defenders was Harlequins, third defenders was Marines. I find that honestly really, really interesting. I would love to see the pairings from the rest of the event for this round to see if there's any sort of commonality between, it's considered smart to use those in those positions, right? Depending on where it's at.
Yeah.
But was this White Scars Marines as well? Or...
This was Space Wolves, and we were talking about earlier about how you don't really want to pair the Space Marines into the Sisters because the Sisters trade very well. Well, the Marines paired themselves into the Sisters,
as opposed to the Guard, which they had.
As opposed to the Guard and
no
the
one
Knights.
wanted to touch that Guard and Knights list. No one
again,
wanted to touch it.
those Knights are doing, they're doing D6 damage in combat there, and they've got their Rad Cleansers. They're basically flamers, always doing a 2+.
Yeah,
they do flat free damage. So
this,
you don't want to.
This is seen as like an aggressive bully list. This Guard list.
Yeah, it's doing a pretty good job at it. Yeah, it's working out quite well for it. It's a decent list. I think there's a lot that needs to be scared of it, including this apparently. But I don't think it could have gone much worse for this list. So it may as well have just picked the Guard at this point.
It decided. So the Marines, so the Wolf list decided to pair into the Sisters list. What was the result as opposed to finding the Guard?
The Space Wolves got nothing. It was
0.
It was 20-0 to resist.
Wow.
Which is hard to do in this. You need to get 51 points or more. A 51 point or more lead win. So that means the Space Wolves cannot have scored more than 49 points, including their painting score.
So, yeah, they left with 39 or less points.
Basically. So I can see that Sean, the Space Wolf player, is going to be having really hard words with Reese after that game about his role in the team and why he's not going to get thrown into the bus again like that.
Just don't play Sisters.
That's fascinating. Okay, and then so then the two armies that weren't picked play each other. The Hook,
yes, that's
as
the
I
Hook
like to
matchup.
call them.
Yeah,
the Hook matchup. And so this ended up being Stonks had Sisters of Battle, and then I'm so bad with words. The French team, I'm just going to say.
Just called Semi-Crispy.
The Semi-Crispies. Semi-Crispies, big love to you, bonjour. They had the Guard. And this ended up. So it's quite interesting what you saw with the choices in Defenders in 3, because you end up now with these playing against each other. And surely that's got to come into effect when you're choosing which of the attackers you're going to play against in 3, right?
Absolutely, 100%. And I feel like this is actually okay for the Guard, for the Semi-Crispies here as well, because they don't really mind trading into the Sisters too much, because actually they have a surprising number of units, especially if the Moirax is breaking down into lots of units of 1. They may die, but you may also get a Repentia squad back for it. That's absolutely fine. You've got a lot of units that you can use to screen out those outflanks that you're using with the new reserve mechanics on 9th edition with the Sisters, where they get that reliable charge for Miracle Dice. So I feel like this is a game that the Guard can handle, but it doesn't mean that I think they absolutely smash it.
Okay, good. And so, what was the results of this match?
You got the score?
Yeah, it was 12-8 to the Semi-Crispy Admech Knights.
Wow. Okay, so the bully list did end up getting those 12 points against the Sisters. Fascinating. So, with a score still in hand to come, we don't know the exact result of the match.
Yes,
but we've actually still got a match.
Got one more game
as well.
Yeah,
to talk about
the champion match, Rob.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Hold
on. These are the guys. So obviously in the third round, you're putting forward defenders, you're putting forward attackers, and you have each team will have a list that they will not have used in that third round pairings, either as an attacker or defender. So they are the remaining guys, the champions, the secret lovers, whatever you want to call it. So for the Semi-Crispies, that was their Chaos Space Marine list, their Word Bearer Possessed Bomb, and then the Stonks, it was the Craftworld Jakari, so it was the racks and the D cannons.
Yeah, and I think. Sorry, Rob. You go for your point.
I was gonna ask. It's interesting that we haven't seen these put into, I don't think, any of the attacking roles before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
I think the weren't the Drakari used early on and refused. They were used as an attacker in the first round, and the Semi-Crispy demons refused them.
Yeah.
But the Chaos Space Marines were never put into anything.
I feel like this is where the round really swung for me, because although the Possessed have lost their mortal wound ability, they still have a lot of attacks. They can run through those racks if they absolutely need to. It won't be quick, but they'll get through those racks very, very quickly. Yeah. And when you've got the definition of a swing match where no one's picking to play against someone else, and that is that favorable to you, I think that you've got a big problem in your pairings, because now you're basically in a 20-point hole.
Yeah. Because, I mean, those Possessed, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, is it 1 CP, they're getting +1 damage, they're getting +1 to hit?
I believe you're correct. They did lose a lot from Vigilus. So they lost a lot of stuff from the Vigilus section, but you don't really have a way to reach out and grab and remove those Possessed. So those Possessed just run across the board like a tide and just run over your racks, and then you die.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're getting +1 to hit, +1 to wound. They're doubling their getting extra damage. You know, they're just the amount. I think is it 4 attacks each? It's just crushing.
The damage output of the possessed is higher than the durability of the Rax.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're pretty durable.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. It's just lots of attacks. It just works quite well. So you just run over there, you whack them right hard, and it's like, all right, sound brilliant. There's 20 points to me, and now you've got to make that back in the other swings. Great.
So how did this match end up?
As Tom said, it was a 20-0 to the Chaos Space Marines.
20-0. Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, the possessed steamrolled it. So
yeah. There's not much you can do in that situation as Vidrahari, I don't think.
Here you go, a little bit of an insight. Olivia, Father Beaver is right in there. The pairings have gone in directions that they'd hoped. They were basically winning. They were getting the pairings they wanted of each step, which is why they never needed to propose the CSMs because they wanted to keep them in the back.
Yeah,
nice.
I think they did a good job.
And then they just smashed it through in this final pairing at the end.
And this is no disrespect to the Stonks or disrespect to Reese, but this shows the French guys. They're very well
professional outfit.
A very professional outfit. They're well drilled. Hell, they've got their own Facebook page. That's how pro they are. But we talked about the importance of prepping for your pairings and prepping well. They've prepped well to know they'll always have the CSM in the bank at the back, and they can force by refusing matches in a certain way. They'll probably end up forcing at least one of those matches to go onto CSM at the end for a big win for them.
Yeah, the only way to avoid it is to let's say take the sisters out of the pairing in Defender 3, or take out the Custodes and then put in the Eldari mix. But then you've got a problem that you just have a suboptimal attack, and then you've got a big issue with that, right?
Fascinating. So Reese in chat saying that the fact it was my first time doing pairing showed, and then obviously if you double that up against Semi Crispy's Captain Pierre, am I saying that right?
Olivier, right?
Yeah, it's Olivier. Yeah, his handle means Father Beaver. Okay. like Papa Beaver.
Listen, I only refer to everyone via their Twitch handle. Eventually, that's how I get to know everyone.
Eventually, it spells it right as well.
More often than not. So, honestly, fascinating trip through that match for me, especially when it like when we saw the pairings and how they ended up playing. It looks like the game, the whole match is going to the French, with still one match to report.
Yeah, with one match to report, the Crispies are sitting on 91 points, the Stonks 49.
Yeah, so for context, you need 86 points or more to win the round. Out of the 160 available.
Okay. Well, fascinating. Honestly, really fascinating. And you can find, if you type !list now, you can find the link to the Google Doc with all of the lists, and we'll include that in the show notes for you people to check out. Also, if, very much like we're seeing there from Reese who's saying in the chat, if you haven't done pairings before, or you haven't been through that process, obviously you can listen to the WTC Squadcast, because it's got the option of, you guys talk about this quite a lot. It really is, I feel like, the main USP, really, of the 40k World Team Championships, this process, and it'll be very fascinating to hear what happens in some of those other matches and see if there's any sort of correlation in these pairings. Do you think that anything in this pairing particularly stood out to you or was fairly unique, or do you think that it was just a case of the French have practiced this quite well?
It's as you say, the French practice well. The fact that they kept the Chaos Space Marines in the back pocket the whole game shows that they were planning. They were trying to push it. They were trying to push certain of the Stonks lists down to the back to get that matchup. That was a big matchup. And engineering that matchup there, the way they've done is really big.
Really good.
And then I say, and some of the other games just fell very much into place for them.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with all of that.
Okay, in fact, honestly, really, really enjoyed this as a process, and I enjoyed both of you giving me the knowledge. Thanks very much, Tom and Neil. And we're going to be back next week. Next week, we'll most likely be talking about the overall meta of the event, because I think that's interesting as well. Which armies, as you guys said, Tau, are we seeing any Tau armies at all in these teams of 8 chosen? Unlikely, but maybe, right? So that'll be fascinating to see ultimately, and because team lists do vary to singles lists, right? That's true.
Massively, because you have these roles, attacker, defender. You're looking at if you'll design lists to specifically be defender every single round. You'll be designing lists that can either pose specific questions to the opponent, or take those or answer specific questions the opponent's going to pose.
So I control left Tau in the list document. 10 of the 12 research results that it came back to me were for Taurox Primes. And the other two were both in the same Tau list. Whereas one Tau player, and I wish him all the best.
Yeah, so what team is that, Tom?
Let me just find it. I need to scroll up a bit. It's the team from nowhere. That's one of the Polish teams.
No, that's actually no. It's like Poles, Bradchester's on that team.
Oh my word! Right, okay, they are duped. Holy shit!
It's like it's all the WTC players that couldn't get a team together made.
So it's the unwanted mercs. I see. Okay, yeah. That explains why Brad's. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Interesting. So yeah, we'll break down the meta next week, which will be super fun, and then we'll go through maybe another pairings, which was a great process, and I really enjoyed. Thank you to both of you. Anything else that we can listen to this week, Neil? Is there any other way that, like, between today and next week, is there any way that we'll be able to deal with, find out any more information out
about this specific tournament?
Yeah,
I'd say the best way to find it out is get onto the Greekhammer Discord. I'm sure the guys from the channel put up there, or go to the Greekhammer Facebook page. There's a link to the Discord there, because the games have been played all the time. And a lot of these games you can just drop in and watch them. They're being streamed. Also, a lot of the teams that are playing are streaming them on their Facebook pages, like the semi-croissants, like Sky. Sky is streaming all the Canadian games are getting streamed. There are a lot of the teams are streaming this stuff on Facebook. So just go out, look for the team, search for the team that's playing, and look for their Facebook landing page. You'll probably find the matches there.
There you go. So keep eyes on that, and then join us again next week, same time, and we'll do the same thing, which I'm looking forward to. So thanks very much. Any final bits before we go? Anything else? Obviously, you can go onto the worldteamchampionships.com website for 40k, and also there's a Facebook page, and there's also the Squadcast you can listen to if you'd like more information on this. Anything else that I might have missed, Neil?
No, I think that's everything, Rob.
Nailed it.
There we go.
Tom, smashing work.
Sorry. We have a Patreon, don't we, Tom? And we actually have somebody paying us on the Patreon.
Oh my word, we do.
So
it's a WTC Patreon. If you like the Squadcast and that kind of stuff, it supports the event, so it is appreciated.
Okay, sweet. Well, thanks for listening to this. This has been Honest Wargamer. You can listen to me talk, and me and Tom talk literally for hours and hours every week about 40k Rage Sigmar. So do tune in for that.
And you probably will this week, to be honest.
Yeah.
New Bellico boys. I want to hear about the new Bellico.
Wait, is the new model actually revealed yet? I just saw the nipples.
But it looks like he's not 40k relevant because he's got a Chaos Warrior on his base.
I can sort that.
So unless you do a different base,
really,
but at the same time, Rob, don't forget that I do play with the old STDs.
You see, Rob, I did tell you yesterday that 40k were the bastard child of Games Workshop, and this base just demonstrates my point.
I mean, that's what I think, based on all the support.
Based on all the data.
Well, thanks everyone for listening. It's been lovely listening to you, having you join us, and you should join us again next week. It's gonna be super fun. Everyone have a nice day, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.